So I was just reading over your consults, leash reactivity, but now you're starting to get reactivity with people coming inside the home.
Right. Yeah. And we're not sure if that's due to some injury or if it's like always been, you know, part of his, I guess, personality. He's just been like repressing it or like wanting love from people because he was like a shelter dog. Right now, he's a little aggressive, but he was sedated this morning because he broke his dew claw. So I had to take him into the vet and get all that stuff
Okay.
sorted. So he was a little reactive to everything and everyone today, but that I think is more of a special circumstance. But he has been reactive and aggressive towards
people he wasn't previously.
Yeah, people he have. Are you joining this meeting?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You want to be in the video or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not
Sorry.
not a lot of
Yeah, it's my boyfriend Andy. And yeah, I guess I'd say it was like in the last month or so that he's been a little bit more aggressive towards people. Like he would growl at people he doesn't know. It's like he would like go up excited to meet someone, and then once he like sniffed them and realized he didn't know them, then he'd like start growling and like maybe like jump or um, nip at their hand or something. So and before COVID and everything, he would have a dog walker come once a day, and so he was exposed to different people. And the only reports I got back from the dog walker of like issues were like he was pulling on his leash, so I would like give them some tips with what like I would do and what like the initial obedience class kind of trying to figure out said to like kind of do to work on the leash pulling. But it's gotten to like a new level recently, I would say, with aggressive and reactive behavior.
Okay. When people come over, I'm assuming like they knock, and is that when he starts to like have a spiel?
He actually realizes when someone's here when we like answer the call from the front desk saying someone's here. He'll like get super excited and run to the door and like sniff at the door. And we've been working on not jumping when people come in, but my like whole process with him has always been like give the guest like a treat to give him and like have the guest make him sit before he can have the treat, because otherwise he's just like overexcited and jumping all over. So that used to work. But you had a friend over a couple weeks ago and that did not help at all. He was like pretty aggressive towards the male guest that was over. And it does seem to be more towards men some of the time, but the aggressive behavior towards my sister was definitely new.
Who he had met before?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Several times, or just like he had met her before?
Yeah. So yeah, I had lived at home during the beginning of COVID, so he was around her all the time. He loves my mom and dad. Like my mom, I guess, must look like me and smell like me. So he's like behaves very well with her. But yeah, he was a little bit more well, he was aggressive towards my sister, and she lives at home too right now. So she would have been around him, I guess, I mean, for like part of the week that he was with my parents. Yeah.
Yeah. And he'd see her at least since you guys left. Like he'd still see her at least once a month.
Yeah, once or twice a month, depending on when we were out visiting.
With the recent male guest, did he just walk in? Was he like, hey, was he loud? What was the energy like?
Yeah, he was boisterous, loud. Yeah, he's a loud individual in general. And he's bigger. He's like 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah.
And he's not afraid of dogs at all. He grew up with big dogs, so he kind of walked in with, it's all cool. he knows the dog. So he hadn't met Cooper before, but he'd been here in the environment before, met Wookie before. So he walked in feeling very comfortable. And then Cooper got quite defensive, I think. You can kind of see it physically in his behavior.
If people were to like be quiet and just like kind of hanging out, and then someone jumped up and like clapped or something, would Cooper bark or like react to that?
He might bark. He definitely reacts. Like he'll jump up too. He'll like get either ready to play, or get like scared and kind of shake.
Yeah, he definitely like focuses on hand movements. So I mean, obviously I don't know what his life was prior to being rescued, so not sure exactly what occurred, but he'll definitely watch people's hands and see like where they're moving or what they're doing. And even with like your friend, you said you guys took up the dogs for a walk before. I guess that's another piece. We have 2 dogs living together now. Wookie is 7 years old, and you've had him since he was a puppy. He's generally pretty well behaved.
More chill.
Definitely more chill. Cooper's definitely more like high energy most of the time, and they usually get along.
Yeah.
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're usually best buds, but
What do you walk them on? A harness, collar, prong collar?
On a harness usually. We've done just the collar sometimes if need to give him a break from the harness. He, for some reason, the harness rubs weird sometimes, so we'll like just walk him on the collar sometimes.
we've tried multiple different types of harnesses, and they all will eventually be rubbing him. Not red, but he'll be thinner. His hair will be thinner where it rubs him either on the shoulder or on the belly.
We do have, so my parents have an open yard, and all the dogs around there have electric fences. So we do have an electric collar for him, just when I was home with them and stuff. And we've used it like at the dog park sometimes to like work on his recall. We haven't had to use it too much for like discipline or anything. Like I've never shocked him like super hard for any reason. It's more the vibration and like noise that like helps him like remember, I guess, what he's supposed to do. But I also don't know if my parents were using that more while he was home with them. I don't think so. They didn't mention it, but my dad's the one who initially bought him the shock collar. So
Okay. And you said, wait, it's an electronic collar, or is it a electronic fence collar?
it's not an electronic fence. They don't have a fence, so they just got the collar so that they could let him run in the yard and not be worried about him like never coming back. They could, beep him or give him like a low level shock to come back.
With the 6-week obedience that you did, what was it like with treats and stuff?
Yeah, it was all treats based.
Okay.
And they were all adult rescue dogs or newer dogs that people had gotten. Probably 6 dogs in the class at a time. I mean, one was really reactive to other dogs, so she was like barriered against to practice, but he doesn't normally have issues with dogs off leash. It's when he's on leash, he'll like react to them and bark at them and things like that on walks. Yeah.
Try to get to them.
Yeah, it doesn't like, it sounds aggressive, but he I think is more playing, but his bark is very manly. Maybe you have a different view of it.
I don't think he's being playful on the leash at all. I think that if he was allowed to, he would grab a hold of either the dog or the person that he is jumping at with his mouth.
Okay. Is the harness your idea or your trainer's idea?
I think I just automatically got him a harness when I picked him up, just because he's an escape artist and he slips off the collar very easily if you're walking him on the collar. So you either have to make sure it's like tight enough where he's not going to slip off, or my We have a choker collar, but we've never really used it much.
The pinch one or the chain one?
Just the pinch one that it's like a slip knot. Yeah. But like that also doesn't stop him from pulling. He just pulls.
Well, you said the pinch one that's like a slip knot
Yeah.
with the prongs like that.
Nope. There's no prongs. It's just it's like a cord.
It's just a rope.
So
Yeah,
the
it's just a
chain.
rope
Yeah.
with-
Okay. So that's just it's a slip chain.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else?
Not offhand, I guess.
Okay. How long have you had them for?
Just over a year and a half. Got him in October 2019.
Okay, so you got him as an adult.
Yeah, the shelter thought he was a year old. When I took him to the vet, they said like between 2 and 5. So it's been like a year and a half. So it'll be somewhere between 3 and 6 now.
Okay. So it sounds like to me you have a frustrated dog who may potentially be nervous or have nervous tendencies. Okay. The leash reactivity, the harness is actually your biggest problem because harnesses promote reactivity. And so you don't have an aggressive dog. You have the reason why I in my opinion, how I determine these things is because if you have an aggressive dog that's leash reactive, like even off leash, they're not going to be social. Okay. And your dog is social off leash, but on leash, your dog becomes frustrated. And a dog, when they express an emotion, they're very mouth based. They lick, they chew, they bark, they bite, they salivate, they pant. They're very mouth expressive when it comes to expressing emotions, if you will. So when you walk your dog in a harness, dogs have this thing what's called opposition reflex. Are you familiar with that term?
No.
So when the dog feels pressure, they want to go against it. You pull back, they pull forward. You pull forward, they pull back. You pull left, they pull right. They pull, you pull right, they pull left. Right. So like let's say with this flat collar, he's on a leash, and you pull forward, and he starts to pull back, right, and then he slips out of it. That's like opposition reflex. Okay. It's a natural instinct. I think all animals have it. So when you put a dog in a harness, and he feels pressure against his chest, it triggers opposition reflex, and the dog tends to want to pull more. Now, there are things like no pull and or front clip harnesses. A no pull harness is an oxymoron because harnesses are meant for pulling. Horses wear harnesses to pull, like carriages. Huskies wear harnesses to pull sleds. So it's not so much that it's a no pull harness, it is that since it's on the front, it deviates the pulling power to the side. So the dog doesn't have the full power of their chest to put behind the harness, but you're still going to get frustration either way. Okay. So in protection training, which is when we train a dog to be aggressive towards a human on command, we'll put the dog, like let's say a German Shepherd, on a harness because we don't want anything inhibiting the throat. Okay. And then we have a person in front of that dog, agitating them, being suspicious and like pissing them off, and then the person behind the dog is pulling back on the harness to create tension. And eventually we start to build frustration in that dog, and the dog will start to like kind of lunge and bark and snap at the air. And when we see that, we praise it, and then we will let the leash go to allow the dog to express the need to go after the target as a means of reward. And then we gradually build that up to a dog that would bite on command. Okay. So this is something that the average dog owner doesn't know. It happens all the time. I get puppies that were friendly as puppies, 2-month-old puppies, loved everyone and everything. Owner walks the puppy on a harness, and then over the course of the first year of their life, their puppy progressively becomes aggressive because every time they see a dog, they pull their puppy away, to keep their puppy from like annoying the dog. But the puppy thinks every time I see a dog, I feel negative tension, and it creates distrust. And you repeat this over the course of the first year of a puppy's life. Every single time they see a dog, eventually they become from friendly puppy to frustrated puppy to all of a sudden we have an agitated, aggressive puppy or dog. Okay. So harnesses are the worst thing. They have no training value. Unless your dog is going to pull a very heavy tire or pull a sled, harnesses have no purpose for a dog. Okay. So when it comes to the behavior within the home, it sounds like he's becoming more territorial, which is a normal response, except it's not acceptable in our world, right? Because you have guests, you have friends, and all that stuff. And I think it's his frustration. He's getting overwhelmed with frustration because for a dog to have had no problems with someone and all of a sudden have a problem with them, that doesn't make sense. Typically if the dog doesn't have a problem, it's instantaneous. So when you said like he was fine with your sister, but then recently had frustration towards her or a defensive response, I'm thinking, okay, that something's off there. Okay. And some people think like, oh, like, not saying in this case, but someone was like, well, my dog used to love this person, all of a sudden they don't. Like, did that person abuse them or whatever? I'm like, no, it's like it's used. There's something like going on. In this case, I just think he's overwhelmed and he's frustrated. Okay. Now, the reason why I said nervous is because nervous, when I asked about like if someone just moves and claps and stuff, will he trigger? That tends to be a very that's a characteristic of nervous dogs. So fear, anxiety, and nervousness look very similar, but they have one kind of defining feature. Fear aggression tends to want to always stay away. Okay. And if you move back, they'll move in. If you move in, they'll move back. And if you put them in a different room, they won't shut up. They'll bark the entire time. They never relax. Nervous energy will calm down, but then if something suddenly changes, they'll trigger and they'll start barking. Anxious energy will be in the room and they'll pace and sit and lay down and get up and walk around and jump on the couch and jump off. Anxious energy won't relax. Okay. So one of the other things about nervous energy is they don't like big, boisterous, loud energy. That's why I asked about the friend coming in. Okay. Because these help me kind of to figure out like where are all these behavior issues coming from, because the problem isn't the reactivity. Okay. The reactivity is a outcome or a symptom of a problem. In my theory and understanding here, it's frustration for sure on the leash, for sure that's frustration. And I believe some kind of level of nervousness. Okay. Because it's like a spectrum. Just because your dog's nervous doesn't mean they're really nervous. It just means they have nervous tendencies. Okay. And I think these two things together are what is causing your dog to kind of progressively get worse, is because the frustration has nowhere to go, and he's just kind of getting pent up. I'm also picking up overstimulation. Okay, overstimulation is typically a lack of boundaries. Boundaries to a human is very different from boundaries to a dog. Boundaries for a human would be like, no, don't do that kind of clap thing, right? Or like redirect them with the treat. Whereas boundaries for a dog from another dog would be, if you do something I don't like, I'm going to bite you. Okay. Boundaries for a dog is physicality. So when a dog's not getting that physicality correctly, we can get frustration. So last year I had like 6 puppies, like 6 to 8-month-old puppies that were constantly eating sticks and like barking and pulling and all that stuff. And the owner thought like, what's going on? My puppy's going crazy. And I was like, well, your puppy's just really frustrated because they wouldn't settle down. They were too overstimulated. There were too many options in the world for them, that it creates this frustration because they can't get to every option. I want to chew on a stick. I want to meet that dog. I want to say hi to that person. I want to pull in this direction. I want to sniff that flower. Like there's all these choices, and it becomes overwhelming. And that can also be a part of frustration as well. Okay. So everything that you're describing here, I see all the time. Okay, it's nothing out the ordinary for me. In my opinion, with your dog being frustrated, I think this should be a fairly straightforward case. The only thing that would be a variable is the inside behavior with people coming over. Okay. Questions so far about any of this stuff?
I did forget to mention with your family in their yard. We had them.
Oh yeah, we're outside as well.
Yeah, because he kind of exhibited similar behavior when we were outside with his family. I mean, we were in a new environment. We were in their backyard. And we kind of let them know before, like he'd been having like some aggression towards humans. but like if any of them like kind of went to pet him, he would start growling.
Mhm.
And nip at them.
Yeah. Or like even like he like was laying like on me and your aunt was trying to pet him and he was like starting to growl but kind of asleep.
Yeah.
Okay. When they were petting him, were they talking to him like in a baby voice or in a high pitched voice?
I don't think so.
No,
Yeah.
no, they were talking to him normal.
Had they met them? Had they met
That was
him?
the first time meeting him.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were very calm. They weren't boisterous at all. And they, you know, they weren't like reaching or trying to, you know, become his friend. They were letting him settle down because we'd warned them ahead of time. And even at that point, just after he laid down, and like it was like a very gentle like reach and just along the grain of his fur on his back, triggered him to start growling and quite aggressively react.
Okay. And before all this stuff started happening, right? Let's say you're in that same situation, he would have been fine.
I mean, probably like a year ago. I
Okay,
don't know
but-
about like how recently it would have.
Yeah.
I feel like it has exacerbated in the last month, but he probably would have needed like at least some adjustment period before being more friendly to them. But I mean, before, yeah, I was able to take him to friends' houses and people like he would come over and people would pet him and he'd be fine, even if there are like other dogs there. So
Yeah.
that was definitely like a more recent thing.
Now, I don't know if this matters or not, but like another like recent big change was that we moved in together, and so they moved out of her place and moved into this place. A lot of their furniture came with him, but now it is a house of four of us, two dogs and the two of us.
Mhm.
And so that happened at the beginning of March.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that could lead to the frustration or nervousness.
It shouldn't. Unless like I would expect to see like tension between him and the new people that moved in, you know, where it's more so like external, right? Like he's kind of settled in, he's accepted them like as part of the home, the norm.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel so going back to like the outside setting or recently the family thing is a couple of things there. Is and dogs can change over time according to the nature versus nurture concepts, right?
Mm.
So like typically you won't have the dog that you're going to have until 2 weeks to a month after you've brought them home. Okay. So like I've had clients literally, they'll get like one, for example, they got a Chihuahua and loved everybody the first 2 weeks. And literally 2 weeks on the dot, the dog claimed the mom and was aggressive towards anybody else. Okay. Nobody else could touch the dog but the mom. Okay. So there's like an acclimation period. If you feel like no, he was actually like normal, you know, for like a few months before it happened. For me, that all just sounds like frustration setting in and then like just kind of over the course of time escalating. And I think maybe within the setting of where with your family, you know, overstimulated, stressed, even though he may not show it as much, because I'd have to look at him visually to kind of get a good read on him, paired with some kind of nervousness. Because if he was like truly aggressive when he went to pet him, it would have just happened like that. There wouldn't be a growl. And I know you said he nipped, right? But dogs are very good about like depth perception, like giving correctional bites and stuff like that. So that nip doesn't make him aggressive. That nip is saying, hey, I don't know you. I'm not comfortable with you. Back off and don't touch me. Okay. So imagine if you're walking, right? Like you maybe show up to a party and there's someone who comes up to you and just starts kind of rubbing your shoulder. And you're like, who the fuck are you? Right? Like, even though you're at a party with each other, like, I don't know you. Why are you coming up and just touching me like that? But for dogs, we think dogs like that, which they do if it's welcomed. right? But just like with humans, and even if we have a couple that's in a relationship, if one person touches the other one and it can be unwelcomed at that time, right? But as a human, we'd say like, hey, don't do that, I'm not in the mood, right? Whereas for him, he doesn't have that. He just goes, I'm going to growl at you, and if you don't respect this growl, now I'm going to escalate. Okay, so that's what I would call a correctional nip and or bite. So I had to like evaluate all these things, but I think that process was probably because he was stressed about the environment. If there was a lot of people, even though they were quiet and calm, just the all the different people being there, he was probably a little bit overwhelmed. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he was off leash. He wasn't like running after anyone. He was fine. It was just when anyone went to pet him.
Yeah, and then we threw a toy out in the yard to get him to kind of get some space, and then we're able to kind of let him keep distant, which he did most of the time.
Yeah. So
and then he wanted to be close to you, and he came and lay down, like basically right underneath you.
Yeah, and now that the whole like when he was next to you and stuff, that can be territorial, right? Because he's in your space and he's saying, hey, get away from us, right? Now, like let's say there's a big kind of group, and then your dog is there, and instead of like intermingling with the group, he's like on the outside doing his own thing. Like that tells me like he doesn't want to be here, right? Because he's on the outskirts of the social bubble. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, he definitely laid down in the middle of the circle, so it wasn't like he didn't want to be involved, but he just didn't want to be touched.
He did both. He went and he kind of like
that both the dogs are playing.
Did the perimeter thing too. He sniffed around and went around the entire edge of the fence. Sure. And then after that, there was no way out. Then that's the way I perceived it. So there was no way out there. So then he came back and he settled down next.
Kind of like have to deal with it. Sure. I mean, if that's how you're perceiving it, then I would kind of trust your gut there, you know? So it's all good information. That would be another variable. Like I cannot make your dog like people touching them, right? If it's not welcome, it's not welcome. We do have exercises for that stuff, and yes, it can happen. I think a really big component is simply like, I think he's overstimulated and frustrated, and it's not going anywhere. He kind of just sits there and it festers, you know. Questions about any of this stuff so far?
When you were talking about, I just jumped out of my brain. Boundaries, like human boundaries versus dog boundaries. Like everything is physical for the dog. Like what's an example of how you effectively would set a boundary? Like you mentioned the leash is using the right kind of leash is important. But like within the home, is it like never allowed on the bed kind of thing? Or
that's human boundary.
That's human boundary. So then so for him it's like, okay, just don't engage him until he engages you in terms of like petting, stuff like that.
Right. So I like that you're thinking, right? And the reason why I said that the bed thing is a human boundary is if you go on Google, one of the most common things that people read are if your dog is exhibiting reactivity, don't let them sleep in your bed. Don't let them be on the couch. You know, you eat before they eat. You walk out the door before they walk out the door, right? And I get people that do that stuff all the time, but the dog still has issues. So the dog boundary would be, you can have, like the only time I care about the dog being on the bed is if there's behaviors around that context. So like, let's say I have a couple where if the wife is in the bed with the dog and the husband comes in, the dog will guard the bed against the husband. So there is an active problem around the bed, right? Now, if they remove the dog, the husband gets in, there's no problem. And then they invite the dog back in, there's no problem. Because the context is the dog is with the wife and goes, this bed is mine, okay? She's mine too. You're not allowed in here, right? So, and it sounds dumb, but literally if you remove the dog off the bed, they're no longer on the object. They're not in a kind of resource guarding claim type mode, okay? So then the person can get in and the dog can hop on, no problem. Okay. So so human boundary of the only time I care about that kind of stuff is there an active issue around these things? Okay. Dog boundary would be I have a leash reactive dog, and let's say dogs walk other dogs for the sake of example, right? And the dog's walking, what's your guy, Cooper, right? And then Cooper starts to act out. The dog just come up and bite him and go, don't do that. We keep walking. Okay, does that make sense? So the physicality component is, in your case, your e-collar. Okay, your e-collar is physical because it's a muscle contraction if you're using the stem. The tone and the vibration function, in my opinion, have no purpose. Okay, because the vibration isn't really a negative. It's just a neutral, flat vibrational response. The tone is just a pitch, right? Now, can it get a dog's attention? Yes. Can it divert a dog's attention? Yes. But that's not the same as applying a consequence for behavior we don't want. Okay. So growing up, I was raised old school. I was spanked. And the first time my mom said, don't do that, it just meant don't do that. Right. And then I got spanked. Now, don't do that has a totally different meaning. Does that make sense? So for our dogs, if he's doing something and they go, no, bad dog, no bad dog, it's just sounds and words to him that he does not understand. Unless I said no, and then I applied a consequence behind it, now no has a different meaning to him. Okay. But the problem is dogs don't really tell each other no. So if a dog came up to Cooper on the leash while he was on the leash, right? Even though he's off leash friendly, for whatever reason, he's like, I don't like dogs in my space when I'm on the leash. He would just nip and or bite them to set a boundary. When someone came to pet him, when he was not welcome, he did not welcome it. He growled as a warning, and the nipped as a follow through of like, hey, if you keep touching me, I'm gonna get physical with you, right? And then what happens with the human? We stop petting him. He achieved the boundary that he wanted. Does that make sense? So that's dog boundary. But now it's like, how do we take these tools like the e-collar and talk to him in his language?
Gotcha.
Because we tend to train dogs in our language in the way that we understand. And that's why so many trainers fail and a lot of people fail, because they're not approaching their dog as another dog would. Okay. So when you talk your dog's language, the progression is much more quicker because he understands. Right. So if you go to China and you don't speak Chinese and you're a teacher there, do you really think you're going to teach the kids stuff if you only speak English? Right? You gotta learn how to speak Chinese. You gotta talk to them in their language. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. So for dogs, I talk their language, which is why I'm a very effective and efficient trainer, because they're like, oh, Jesse knows what I'm all about. He knows how to talk physicality to me in a way that I understand, but in a way that's not confrontational. Because, and not that confrontation is wrong, but people, when we use tools like e-collar and prong collar, people always are concerned about, like, am I abusing my dog? I'm like, well, if you're applying it in a fashion that your dog doesn't understand, or there's no concept for them to kind of figure out what to do, you're just going to create more problems because the dog does not understand it. And if you're using the collar willy-nilly and you're just like, I'm going to remote my dog for the sake of remoting my dog, that's abuse. That's like, there's no purpose to that. But if this dog is blowing up and I tap the collar at 55 out of 127 and the dog stops barking, comes back and chills out and calms down, that's not abuse, that's discipline. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does. I mean, I'm just concerned with him getting more aggressive with the shock. I mean, it's definitely painful to them, right?
So when it comes to making a dog more aggressive, that's a yes and no answer. Okay. If a dog is already in the thought process of, I'm going to bite this or I'm going to like bark at this, it's already there. And early on with e-collar training, when you press the button to correct the dog for staring, quote unquote like nip or bite them to stop the behavior, you're
Mhm.
most likely going to incite it. You're gonna incentivize it. The dog's gonna perform it. But he was already thinking about it, and all of a sudden there's a change, a quick change in the environment that's physical to him. So he blows up in response. Okay. People think, oh crap, I made the problem worse. I go, no, you have to keep the pressure, the e-collar going and escalating the power until the dog regresses or detracts from the behavior or disengages. So then the dog goes, oh, that tap on my neck didn't mean blow up. It meant cut the crap, right? But you have to get the dog to stop using the pressure in order for them to learn to stop the behavior, okay? But most people, because they don't know how to use it correctly, they press the button, they make the situation worse, and then they go, oh crap, the e-collar made the dog aggressive. I go, no, it's because you didn't apply it correctly. When the way we would use this in your case is I wouldn't come in and say, let's make your dog be bad and then apply the e-collar. Okay, that's how most people think. The first thing I would do with Cooper here is teach him how to walk on the leash correctly. Okay, the heel command essentially. My style of heel is very strict. I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps. I take 3 steps, the dog takes 3 steps. I take 1 step, they take 1 step, and they automatically sit with a completely slack leash, and I don't care what's going on in the environment. I don't care if there's dogs, I don't care if there's people, bikers, rollerbladers, if you're in Home Depot, or if you're at the park. I want that level of focus, okay? It sounds complicated, but it's very easy to teach, okay? You just need the right tools and the right methodology to get that. So the reason why the heel is so important is because it allows us to layer in the e-collar in a very non-confrontational manner, in a very neutral context. Okay, we're not waiting or building your dog's stress levels up and then applying it. We're using it completely out of context to teach him what to do, and we see what does this resolve. Okay, so like your leash reactivity, that should get resolved with the heel. Um, the behavior that I'm kind of uh, thinking is more frustration based. The heel should resolve as well, because frustration can come from a lack of physical discipline. Okay, it's counterintuitive to how we think, but when you apply it correctly, you don't know how many times where I get dogs that are lunging and barking because they're frustrated and they just don't know how to calm down. And we do 15 minutes of heel, and all of a sudden they're sleeping at their owner's feet. Okay, because the physicality removed all these options. You can't sniff that, you can't pull to that, you can't bark at that, you can't jump on that, you can't pee on that, you can't poop right there, right? You start to remove options, and then the dog's able to calm down. They go, okay, so if these things aren't options, what are my options? Sit down and chill. Now the dog learns how to be in a passive state, okay? And then we just repeat that. So the heel allows us to apply the e-collar in a non-confrontational manner, allows us to teach the dog the concept of discipline. Because growing up, like for me, until I got spanked that first time, right, when everything was just, no, don't do that, it's like whatever. And then I got spanked. I'm like, okay, now I got to change my decisions. It's the same thing for your dog. Once a dog feels physical consequence, it alters their decisions. Okay. Now, the people coming over is its own context. That's a separate problem. Okay. People touching him while you're at a party is a separate problem. But him, and the leash reactivity and the frustration, all those types of behaviors would be resolved within the heel concept. Okay. The other reason why heel is so important is because it's something that we, walking our dog at least, most people, they walk their dog at least 3 times a day, 7 days a week. Is it something that you can practice on a regular basis? So keep structure in the brain. It's not like we train the dog, they get better, and then we stop. Okay, this is a lifestyle. I'm teaching you like how to be like dog parent, like an actual like dog parent that he would respect and respond to and be like, okay, like I know my place here. Like I don't have to be all the frustrated and all that stuff. I can be nice and chill, but I don't have to worry about anything because you're going to take care of it. Okay. It's a way of life. And it's in the beginning more work because you have to change certain things, but then also reinforce other things. But once you get all the work done, you just kind of reinforce it and you keep repeating. Okay. So the heel command is typically 2 classes. The first class, I would coach you through it. I don't touch the dog anymore. I don't need to. I walk you through everything. Okay. If we do get frustration-based behavior, or like he looks like he's getting more defensive, like biting at the leash and stuff, we have a dog here at my facility that's here for daycare and train who attacks people's feet. We couldn't really remove him from the kennel safely because he was getting too aggressive around the kennel. He's doing a daycare and train with us. My trainer I supervised earlier just did a session with them, and the dog went after him a couple of times before we started the training because he didn't like people in his personal space. And then when we started the training, he kept trying to like alligator roll and like grab the leash and pull at it, and then all that stuff. And we worked him through it. And so at the end, he was being compliant much more smoothly. Okay. So in order to get to point B from point A, it might be a little rocky in the middle. But if we don't work through that, then he never gets better. Okay. But the only time I've ever seen a dog become aggressive towards the owner, just for your sake of mind or peace of mind, is the dog was already actively aggressive towards the owner. Okay. So first thing I would teach is heel, 2 classes, and then we pick up on things. So class 1, right? Give you some instruction, go practice, come back class 2. How we doing? You know what, Jesse? Half of his reactivity is gone. I go, great. What is he being reactive to now? Dogs that bark at him, or like a dog behind a fence. I go, okay, that's pretty normal. We're gonna make a few tweaks, make some adjustments, work on the second half of heel. Here's your homework. I'll see you in a week. Come back class 3. How we doing? Even better. His reactivity towards other barking dogs is even better. Like he ignores them most of the time. I go, great, we're making progress. Continue doing what you're doing. Okay, and then we work on to the next topic. In your case, I only cover stuff that I know you're gonna, not that I know, but that I feel that you're gonna need and use. I don't really teach stuff that has no functional value for you. Okay, so when it comes to your particular case, I think your dog is very much just frustration based. It's possible that he's just kind of nervous territorial, but I won't know that until like I actually start working with them and I start getting feedback from you. Okay, is at minimum, I'd probably suggest 6 classes for this guy. Okay, it doesn't seem like much, but it's pretty straightforward when done correctly. So 2 classes on heel. The 3rd class would most likely, if everything's going well, would most likely be like coming over and triggering the territorial behavior. Okay, because by that point, he has a concept of the e-collar, so that when we apply it, he's going to see it as a communicator as opposed to like this thing that we use to just punish him. Okay, and when it comes to territorial behavior, I have to teach you how to communicate with him and tell him like, hey, we know someone's here. Thanks for letting us know, but you got to chill out and just be calm with our guest around. Okay. Now, in the beginning, I don't care what he does with your guest. I just care that he's not being defensive and agitated towards them. So if he sits in the corner and just like lays down and sleeps the entire time we're there, that's fine. Anything but barking or being aggressive towards our guest, right? The next thing would be if you wanted to help him socialize, if that's an actual thing, because it can happen where the dog's just frustrated, and once the frustration goes away, all that stuff you were describing all of a sudden goes away with it. Okay. Otherwise, if it's like, no, he has legit issues, like he just doesn't like people touching him and all that, and you want to work on that. And I would only care about people he would see on a regular basis, like your family, friends that come over regularly, things like that. They matter. People outside don't matter. Okay. Someone on the street that just thinks your dog is cute doesn't matter. Okay. So I can give you a structured exercise on how to help socialize him correctly. And that would be class 4. And then class 5 and 6 is a variable. Okay. So obedience is very straightforward. I've been doing this over 10 years. I know what I can get done within a time frame obedience wise. Behavior is different. Okay. So I could think, yeah, he's going to be an easy, straightforward case, and then he's difficult. Or I could think it's difficult and it's very easy, right? So the classes 5 and 6 would be, hey, he's making progress, but we'd like to go over like having my loud and boisterous friend over. Like, how do we get him to like him, right? I'd probably say he probably won't, but this is how we'd work on it. And then we would work together on that, okay? Otherwise, if everything's going well, classes 5 and 6, we can teach more stuff, more obedience, more control. Okay. Now, that would be the 6-class program. I have 9 and 12 weeks as well, or 9 and 12 classes as well. Thank you. In those classes, it's more control essentially. Okay, so we have 6 basic obedience commands: sit, stay down, come, place, heel. Heel being the most important to you and your particular case. Okay, the next command would most likely be place command, which is sending the dog somewhere and they don't move for 2 hours or whatever. The reason why this is valuable in your case is, remember, we can't make them like people, but if it's like, hey, I'm going to send my dog over there and he's going to chill and he's not going to bother you, just don't bother him, right? He's got your spot and the humans know what the buffer is. As long as everybody's respectful of that, we should not have a problem from Cooper, okay? The next command that would be important, but not so much like directly related to what you're dealing with, is recall, which is come when called. Because if your dog gets off leash and you need them return, recall is super important. Otherwise, if it's like, no, he's in the house and he's in the yard and he's never outside off the leash, it's not the most important thing to you, but it does give you the ability to do more things with your dog. So that's just really personal preference. Questions?
Not really, but like how, I guess, when would we start if we chose to continue with your treatment or obedience plan? When would we, like, the ideal start date be?
So you would figure that with Maria. Okay. Currently, last I heard from her, we were already booking in July. Okay.
July. Okay.
Yeah. So, and that depends on your availability. Evenings and weekends are my busiest times because most people are 9 to 5. So if you have daytime availability, then that's easier. The other thing is, do you want in person or do you want in home? Okay. So because of COVID, I've had to switch how I operate. Before COVID, I used to travel everybody, but then COVID happened and nobody wanted me in their home. So I started training out of Oz Park, which is like the busiest park in Chicago. So for like the obedience stuff, like the heel and all that, it's a great environment to practice because it's so busy. For some of the behavioral stuff, aside from like the people coming over, it can be done in my facility, like the touching exercises and all that stuff. So this way, if there's a moment he does something, we're not out in public and the people are like, what the hell's going on? And then the only class that has to be done in home would be the people coming inside, the territorial thing, okay? Because I have to demonstrate that to you there. And you can do an in-person program, and then we just charge an in-home fee of like $50 for the one class for me to show up, and then we do the exercise. And then you would just apply that going forward to your guests coming in. If you want everything in your neighborhood, if you're in the city of Chicago, you know, it's more expensive than in-person in Oz Park because it pulls me away from my normal schedule. Because now everybody travels to me. So every now and then I get a client that wants me to go to them, which is more difficult. So then that doing in-home, an entire in-home program is more expensive. Okay. But you can do an in-person and literally just pay the $50 in-home fee. And then we do the one class at your location, and then the rest can be done at my facility or at Oz Park.
And then I guess Cooper obviously got injured today. So would that at all play into like the training or obedience plan? I mean,
I'm looking into July, which it might even be July, August, to be honest with you, because that was early June when she told me that. I would assume he would be much better by then, or
okay.
Are there alternatives to the e-collar, you know, like squirt bottle or stuff like that, that are
not in
like that's the best option, or it's the only option?
I only train with the e-collar.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on my website. I only train with the e-collar because there's a lot of methods out there. There's gentle leader, there's choke chain, there's pinch collar, there's the no pull harness, there's the water bottle, right? And you don't know how many times I get people who've used that stuff and it doesn't work. Okay. The reason why I say e-collar is because it's the most consistent training tool. I know if you do your homework what I can get done. Okay. The biggest variable with e-collar is always the human. Do they do their homework or not? So like, let's say Cooper's being reactive, right? And the collars that we use go to 127. So there's 127 individual levels. And Cooper's number to stop the reactivity is, let's say, 90 out of 127. That's up there, right? Is because you're logical, you're going to say, man, 90 out of 127, that's 3/4 of the power. And you're going to feel guilty. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to go, how'd it go this week? And you're going to say, oh, Cooper was so bad. He was so reactive. The first thing I'm going to ask is, how high did you go on the collar? 40. 40 is not 90. And that's why you didn't get anywhere. Okay. Is the way, and I'm not saying it's going to be 90. There's a process. And if you want to learn this process or get a feel for it, go to my YouTube channel. Watch a lesson 1 video. And if you want to watch, I have a case that's very similar to yours. I had a case. The dog's name is Lake. Okay. So you go to my YouTube channel, look up Lake, Lake, and Lake is a pit bull. She was both human and dog reactive. Okay. And you see her come to my facility and she's barking at everything. Anytime I move, she's just going off. Okay. By the end of the class, she's calm. So there's the uncut video, which is an hour because it's a lesson 1. And then I have a on my channel, it's a playlist, and it's called Client or Dog Training Highlights. Okay, you click on that playlist, and in that playlist, you can see a video of Lake. It's a picture of her like smiling in the sun. You can't miss it. Okay, is the cover photo, and I break down why we brought her from this overstimulated, anxious, stressed out human reactive, dog reactive state to a passive state using physicality. Okay. And you get to see it and kind of get a concept of like, oh, like, no, he's not coming in. It's just like shocking the dog for no reason, shocking the dog because they're being bad. There's a process and a method to it. And those videos will help you understand that better. Okay. Every other tool falls short. Okay. Food is great for stuff you want to see again. You know, if you say sit and he sits, good boy, food, right? But then if he gets up, food doesn't work to deter things. Okay. So like, let's say if he's being aggressive towards a guest coming in, we think treats to make them feel better. But if the dog is stressed out about your guest coming in this territorial, he may not care about the treats. Okay. He's too stressed out about that. So you'd have to calm the dog down and then apply the food as a reinforcer if he'll take it. Okay. Prong collar takes too much technical skill. Slip chain, way too much technical skill. Gentle leader has no correctional value. No pull harnesses or harnesses just create more frustration, which is going to make your situation worse, in my opinion.
With the e-collar, would that be like for the rest of his life for using the e-collar, or is it like once he's showing, you know, more of the
Correct conditioning.
Yeah, like
Right.
then do you like use it less or only use it under like certain situations?
In my book, when you need it, you only use it when you need it. Okay. So the easiest way to explain the e-collar and why it doesn't really go away is, do you guys drive? Do you go on the expressway?
Yep.
Do you go the speed limit?
Nope.
Why not?
Because I can get there quicker.
But if you see a squad car, what happens?
I slow down
Right. Why?
because I've been pulled over.
Yeah, you don't want that for the consequence, right? You don't want that ticket. You don't want that fine. You don't want to lose your license, right? So even
So
as
it's like a
humans,
squad car on their neck.
yeah,
Mm.
even as humans, and we know laws, we're self-aware, we still bend the rules, right? This is called opportunistic behavior. All animals have it. It's part of survival instinct. If there's a pond of water and there's an alligator in it, and the animals know, they will not drink the water. If the alligator leaves, they'll come in and drink water. The alligator comes back, they leave. Okay. When the threat is gone, we take advantage. When the threat is back, we disengage. Okay. Think of the e-collar as your cop on a collar. So when it's present, he's going to be much more well-behaved, much more obedient, all that stuff. But when it's removed, he's going to push the boundaries a bit, right? So when he's walking outside on a leash, if he's going to be off leash at the dog park, just in case something happens, or off leash in general, if you're going to a family party, if friends are coming over, he's got the collar on. And if he's great when no one's around, he's got the collar off. Okay. This has nothing to do with my skills as a trainer. Like I said, this is completely opportunistic behavior. And I think it's the funniest thing because people always go like, when does a dog learn to be a good dog? I'm like, that's not a thing. It's not a dog that dogs do. And even humans don't do that. You know, like I've heard, friends and all that stuff growing, as they've lived my life, and they're like, they, how would say, did all these things for this person, the person still screwed them over. Like, why would they screw me over? Like, I did all these things for them. I was like, because they're a person. They're an animal. They make their own decisions. They don't really care, right? Dogs are the same way. He's not going to wake up one day and go like, you know what? I've made my parents' life bad this past year and a half, and I'm going to change my ways, and I'm going to be a good dog now because they've had enough. It's not a dog thing. He will be a good dog because you make him be a good dog. Okay. And that's where discipline and consequences come in, because those things are meant to deter things. Okay. So like, I only talked back to my mom once growing up. Okay. That's it. I just needed one good correction. I learned, don't talk back to mom. That was it. Okay. So we're not being mean to him. We're just simply giving a structure that he would understand and respect. And I'm not, it's not going to say like it's going to be max out the collar and make them yip and yelp, because that's not the idea here. But in some cases, it does happen. I've had a handful of cases in the past 6 months where we had to max out the collar to stop things, but then we stopped the behavior, and then for everything else we were at a normal level. But if the owners weren't willing to go there, they would be struggling with the behavior. Most dogs, it's pretty standard. They have, it's usually 25 to 30-ish, 35-ish range. Every now and then I get a dog that's higher up in the collar because they're more physically tough, they're more resilient. But this is all stuff that I help you kind of figure out. Okay. So in regards to like the collar and everything, chances are, like, how much did you pay for your e-collar?
I don't know. My dad bought it.
Okay. Chances are it's not a good one. Okay. The brand I use is Dogtra, Dogtra, and Maria will send you this information. And the model your dog would need would be the Dogtra Black Edition. It's the best collar. It's the highest powered collar, meaning you just get more from less. It's a 1 mile range, fully waterproof system. And in terms of the program, I'm thinking at least 6 to, I always focus on the problem. And then from there, if we get the problem done within a few classes and we got 3 classes left, then we can teach other stuff. Okay. If you just want more control in general over your dog, then you have the options of 9 and 12 classes. 9 is a nice kind of middle ground, because it even gives us more leeway on the behavioral stuff, just in case maybe it's more complicated than I thought. 12 classes is like you want a fully, completely off-leash trained dog. All the commands, sit, stay down, come, play, seal, built to off-leash reliability, which is only applicable to like people that like go hiking, they go to the dog beach, they go everywhere with their dog, go to restaurants and all that stuff. Then they need a fully off-leash trained dog. Okay. Anything else?
Not that I can think of right now.
Guys,
So I highly suggest you watch Lake's video. Lake is very similar to your case. Okay, human reactive, dog reactive, even when after a dog or two, but she was a social off leash. Okay, so I think she's a good video to watch to kind of give you an understanding of just how the things that we do work, and then you decide whether or not you want to move forward. Maria will get in contact with you. She'll kind of reiterate everything I said, and then give you your options, and then you would deal with her going forward if you decide to start training. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank
So you guys
you.
enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay.
You as well.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Bye.